Have you ever looked at a smartphone feature and wondered, what were they thinking? Because not every smartphone innovation changed the world. Some disappeared almost overnight. Others cost companies billions of dollars, destroyed product lines, and became embarrassing reminders that even the biggest tech giants can make spectacular mistakes. What's fascinating is that many of these failed ideas actually looked revolutionary when they were announced. Tech journalists praised them. Fans lined up to try them. Companies promised they represented the future. But within months, or sometimes just weeks, they were gone. So what happened? Why did features that seemed so innovative completely fail? Were they simply ahead of their time, or were they solutions to problems that never existed in the first place? Today, we're exploring the smartphone innovations that failed and the surprising lessons they taught the entire tech industry. Some of these failures changed the way every modern smartphone is designed today. And one of them was so expensive that it nearly became one of the biggest disasters in smartphone history. Let's begin. The smartphone industry has always been driven by one simple rule: innovate or disappear. Every year, companies race to release something that no competitor has. Better cameras, faster processors, bigger batteries, smarter software. But somewhere along that race, companies sometimes become so obsessed with being different that they forget to ask the most important question. Does anyone actually want this? That question has buried countless smartphone experiments. Take the idea of modular smartphones. It sounded almost perfect. Imagine buying one phone and upgrading only the parts you needed. Want a better camera? Replace the camera module. Need more battery? Swap it in. Better speakers? Just click them into place. Instead of replacing your entire phone every few years, you could simply upgrade individual components. It sounded like the future. Companies poured years into making it happen. One of the most ambitious attempts came from Google's Project Era, which promised a phone built entirely from interchangeable modules. The concept generated enormous excitement because it challenged the idea of disposable electronics. But reality turned out to be much harsher. Making every component removable made phones thicker, heavier, and more fragile. The engineering became incredibly complicated. Developers weren't convinced people would buy expensive upgrade modules. Manufacturing costs skyrocketed. Eventually, the dream quietly disappeared before reaching mainstream consumers. Interestingly, another company tried a smaller version of the same idea. LG introduced the G5 with removable accessories. Users could swap the bottom section to add camera controls or improve audio quality. Again, it sounded clever. But customers discovered changing modules wasn't quick or convenient. Accessories were expensive. Very few developers supported the ecosystem. Within a year, the modular experiment was essentially over. Sometimes, a great idea simply isn't practical. But the next innovation failed for a completely different reason. Remember when everyone believed 3D was the future? Televisions became 3D. Movies became 3D. Naturally, smartphone companies wanted in. Manufacturers released phones with glasses-free 3D displays, claiming users could watch movies and play games with incredible depth. For a few minutes, it looked impressive. Then the problems became obvious. Viewing angles were extremely limited. Images often looked blurry. Many users experienced headaches or eye strain. Even worse, there was almost no content designed for these displays. Without movies, games, or apps supporting the technology, the feature became little more than a marketing gimmick. Consumers quickly stopped caring. The lesson was becoming clear. Amazing technology means nothing if it doesn't improve everyday life. But then came one of the strangest smartphone trends ever created. Curved displays. Not today's subtle edge screens. We're talking about dramatically curved phones that bend around your hand. When phones like the LG G Flex arrived, they looked futuristic. Advertisements claimed the curved shape made devices more comfortable, stronger, and immersive. People couldn't stop talking about them. Yet after the excitement faded, users realized something surprising. A curved phone didn't actually make texting easier. It didn't improve battery life. It didn't take better photos. Most people forgot the curve was even there after a few days. Manufacturing remained expensive while the practical benefits stayed minimal. Eventually, companies shifted toward flatter designs again, proving that futuristic doesn't always mean functional. But speaking of futuristic, let's talk about something many people believed would completely replace smartphones themselves: gesture controls. Imagine controlling your phone without touching it. Wave your hand to answer calls. Scroll through pages with a simple motion. Switch songs without touching the screen. It sounded incredibly advanced. Companies invested heavily in motion sensors and air gestures. For a while, these features became major selling points. The problem? Touching the screen was already easier. Gesture controls often failed in bright sunlight, required exaggerated hand movements, and sometimes activated accidentally. Instead of making phones simpler, they made basic tasks more complicated. Most users tried the feature once, showed it to a friend, and never used it again. That's a pattern you'll notice throughout today's video. Many failed innovations weren't bad because they didn't work. They failed because they solved problems nobody actually had. But one innovation came incredibly close to changing the industry forever. Flexible phones. Years before today's foldable devices existed, companies showcased flexible display prototypes that could bend dramatically. The demonstrations looked incredible. People imagined rolling phones into pockets like paper, wrapping displays around wrists, completely flexible devices replacing traditional smartphones. But there was one enormous obstacle: durability. Early flexible screens scratched easily. Manufacturing costs were astronomical. Battery technology couldn't keep up. Internal components couldn't bend the same way displays could. The technology wasn't ready. For years, flexible phones remained little more than trade show demonstrations. Ironically, the dream didn't completely die. Instead, manufacturers adjusted the idea. Rather than creating fully flexible phones, they developed foldable smartphones with hinges. Even today, foldables continue improving, proving an interesting point. Sometimes innovation doesn't fail forever. Sometimes it simply arrives too early. Now here's where the story becomes even more surprising. Some of the biggest failures weren't hardware at all. They were software experiences. Voice assistants promised conversations that felt almost human. Early versions struggled badly. Commands were misunderstood. Questions received bizarre answers. Simple requests often failed. Instead of feeling intelligent, they frequently became internet memes. Only years later, with massive improvements in artificial intelligence, did voice assistants become genuinely useful. Timing, once again, proved to be everything. But perhaps no smartphone innovation better demonstrates the danger of chasing trends than the race for unnecessary features. At one point, manufacturers competed by adding feature after feature. Infrared sensors, heart rate monitors, air temperature readers, pressure-sensitive displays, dedicated camera buttons, extra touch sensors. Some were genuinely useful. Many weren't. Consumers eventually realized they didn't want phones with the longest feature list. They wanted phones that performed everyday tasks exceptionally well. That shift changed the entire smartphone industry. Companies began focusing less on gimmicks and more on camera quality, battery life, software optimization, privacy, and long-term updates. Ironically, removing unnecessary complexity became the next great innovation. And now we reach the biggest turning point. Failure isn't always failure. Some of today's standard smartphone features exist because earlier experiments failed first. Fingerprint sensors were once unreliable. Face recognition used to be slow and insecure. Wireless charging started as inefficient and painfully slow. Even OLED displays were once criticized for high costs and limited lifespan. But engineers kept improving them. The difference? These innovations solved real problems. Unlocking phones faster, charging without cables, displaying richer colors, improving battery efficiency. Consumers immediately understood the value. That's the hidden pattern behind nearly every success and failure we've discussed. Winning innovations don't simply look impressive. They make everyday life noticeably better. History shows that consumers rarely reward complexity for its own sake. Instead, they reward convenience. The companies that understand this continue shaping the future. The ones chasing headlines often create products people remember only as strange experiments. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Innovation isn't about being first. It's about being useful. Some of the biggest smartphone failures were technologically brilliant but emotionally disconnected from what users actually wanted. Others were simply too early, waiting years for technology to catch up, and a few became stepping stones that quietly inspire the devices we use today. The next time you watch a smartphone launch and hear phrases like game-changing, revolutionary, or the future, remember this video. Because history has taught us something incredibly important. The future isn't decided on stage during a flashy product announcement. It's decided months later, when millions of people choose whether a feature becomes part of their daily lives or quietly disappears forever. And that's exactly what makes smartphone innovation so fascinating. Every new feature is a gamble. Some become legendary. Others become forgotten chapters in tech history. But every single one teaches the industry something valuable. So here's a question for you. Which failed smartphone innovation do you actually wish had succeeded? Was it modular phones, gesture controls, curved designs, 3D displays, or something completely different? Let everyone know in the comments because some of the most interesting discussions happen there. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the forgotten side of smartphone history, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more premium technology documentaries, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next exploration into the innovations that shape the world we use every day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.